All right, man, let's go ahead and turn over to the NFL. This week, Browns wide receiver Odell Beckham talked with the Wall Street Journal about the NFL restart, and his comments, well, they were less than positive. Beckham pointed out that while the NBA has had a successful restart, the NFL isn't the same, with more players and less bubble. He went on to insinuate that the owners were only pushing ahead for money and that players were more or less, quote, owned by them. So, Jay, does Odell, he thinks the season shouldn't happen, right? So what do you think? Does he have a point, or is this not too happy about this?
Odell. Why is it always with some of these dudes? You ever notice that, like, it's Odell, it's Kyrie. Every time we discuss them, it's for something ignorant that they said.
The usual suspects.
Not to say, and I'm not calling Odell ignorant. I'm not calling Kyrie ignorant. I'm not saying that. But I would take Odell Beckham much more seriously if he opted out. Listen, Odell. When you listen, these are serious things we're talking about. He says the NFL we're not ready for football season. The NFL is not ready. And with that being said, if you feel that way, why are you going about the business of playing? We haven't heard any news that says you're not playing. And so with that in mind, this is one of those things where I'm like, okay, you said this, but what does it really mean? Because And let's think about this in terms of the other sports. NBA's got its bubble. We got it. They finish in the regular season, playoffs. We know NBA rosters is way smaller, so they can fit. It's more conceivable and realistic that they could do that. You're not getting one bubble in the NFL. 53-man rosters, and with coronavirus, just much like what we're seeing in Major League Baseball, they're expanding their rosters a little bit to accommodate the potential positive test. NFL, I imagine they got the same thing going on. And I don't know, but so with that being said, the NFL is not going to have a bubble in there. They could maybe do hubs. Maybe you get 4 different hubs with the west, south, north, east type thing with those divisions. Maybe you could try to do something like that. But the NFL has made it appear they've made the decision to follow Major League Baseball and go about for the most part, a normal season as far as traveling to different cities, different stadiums, and doing that. We know baseball has had some troubles so far, but I would remind you, there's been some explanations to why some of these outbreaks are occurring. Remember the Miami Marlins outbreak? You remember what I said about them? Somebody messed up. And Derek Jeter, the president, whatever role he had, but he's a high-ranking member of that organization, he said, yes, guys broke protocols. Guys were lackadaisical. They let their guard down. They were complacent. That's a beautiful word. You've heard it many times from, prior line of work.
Yep.
But yeah, guys weren't taking it seriously. So, and that was my position. I was saying, there's no way you have that type of outbreak if guys aren't taking it seriously. It can be done. And again, the Cardinals, it's the same thing. I think there was a story out there of some party that they had. You get an outbreak. So, and those are your 2 teams. It looks really bad because when you have an outbreak, the scheduling gets all messed up because it's not only you, it's the other teams on your schedule that now they're missing games, no fault of their own, just like the Phillies. They were a first kind of casualty of the Marlins situation. So it can be done. It can be done. That's not to say you're not going to have any cases, but there's no way you get 18, 19 cases on one team. So I think it can be done. I don't know. I'm not saying Odell's wrong for feeling how he does because I don't know the actual all the mitigation and the procedures and the mechanisms they have in place to have a successful season, which would include safety. I've said this all along. All of these leagues, and I've got to believe, and as an optimist, and I am in this regard, all the different leagues, they've got to be operating in mind. Safety's got to be at the forefront. If it's not, they're doing a disservice to everyone, including themselves, but also the players, the teams, and the paying customer. So if Odell's correct in saying that, then we have a real problem here. But here's the thing. This is going to fall on deaf ears because when you pull up the list of opt-outs, you pull it up on a scroll, a lot of these dudes are anonymous. You could not, Google would not be able to find some of these dudes. You try to pull up on, Pro Football Reference. Some of these pages are blank. It's like, who did you mean someone else? No, I'm really looking, we can't find it. If Odell, can you imagine, and I really believe this, the two guys, the two most notable guys that have opted out to me are Dante Hightower and C.J. Mosley, two inside linebackers in the AFC East, Patriots and Jets. Fine players, Pro Bowl level players in my estimation. They're not stars. They're not stars. And not only that, Odell, he's not a star. To me, he's a superstar. And to me, he's the most talented wide receiver in football. If you really feel this way, Odell, go ahead and opt out. Because then I think the NFL would be more, I think the NFL's got to be paying attention. They got to say, all right, these are our opt-outs. Okay, and it's similar thing as what we saw with the NBA. We saw people opt out, but it was nobody of consequence. I mean, when we talk about Avery Bradley's the biggest name, it's like, all right, yep, well, Avery Bradley, okay. Well, we'll be okay. No LeBron, no Giannis, no Kawhi. The list goes on and on. All the usual suspects that matter in terms of television. They even squeeze in Zion, or so they thought. We don't know how that's going to end up. But all those dudes are available. Same thing with the NFL. And you will notice this. Not one quarterback has opted out. Not one quarterback. That would, if a quarterback took this position, it would mean even more. I'm not telling Odell to go get Baker Mayfield and be like, hey, man, let's opt out, because I don't know if anyone's going to pay attention to that. But it would mean a lot more, and I would take Odell much more seriously if he opted out. And don't forget this. Odell is the third highest paid wide receiver in football. 5-year, $90 million contract he signed back when he was with the Giants. So Odell, I would really hope, and we got an idea of the money you make. I don't know how much money you spend, but I would really hope that you would have, be fiscally responsible. If your health is that, if you're that concerned about your health and what you think the NFL is not doing, I would hope you're fiscally responsible enough to just opt out for a year, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, and as a side note, the NFL opt-out period did end tonight, so he didn't opt out. He's playing. He's playing, and anyone else you haven't heard of opting out is playing. So we saw the same thing in the NBA. There was a lot of guys, when we talk about all the social justice stuff, they were like, well, I don't know, we should really be playing right now, but they all played. I mean, Dwight Howard played. The rest of them played. Yeah, and I think we have to split his comments kind of in two parts here. He made comments about the NFL not being prepared, which does have merit. I can talk about that in a second. But the second half of his comments really gets in a weird spot where he starts talking about how the owners – it's sort of this like he's kind of like insinuating this sort of slave mentality where the owners are just like forcing the players to play and they don't care. All they care about is money. But like you said, every single player has had a chance to opt out. And in fact, every single NFL player to this point in their career, from the first day they went to the combine to now, has had a choice. They've had a voluntary choice they've made to be there. No one's forced anyone to go to the NFL and play football against their will. So, even if you were to opt out in the NFL, their stipends were between $150,000 to $350,000 to not play. You're not getting your contract money, but you would at least get that. So, at worst case, if there was an NFL player that decided he didn't want to play, it was too risky. He didn't have any pre-existing conditions. He just didn't want to catch the Rona. You would at minimum get $150,000 to just sit around and not play football for a year. That's at least 2 to 4 times more than what most average Americans make. I think you'd be okay. So not only is no one forcing you to play, but it's not even a choice of I'm going to starve if I don't play football. Come on, that's not true. That's just not true. So are the owners in it for the money? Of course they are. They're owners. They own the teams that make money. They're businesses, just like anyone else. They want to try to figure out a way to get around this coronavirus. They don't want to just sit on their hands indefinitely and burn what is a multi-billion-dollar organization, which is the NFL. They're not going to just burn their money and just not even try to have a season. They're going to try. So the worst case, you kick your feet up for a year and you chill. I'm sure there's plenty of grocery store workers or doctors, nurses, first responders. They would love to just be able to kick back for a year with triple their usual pay and not do their job. But they didn't get a choice. You have one, and it's acting like I have this choice, but I can't take it. It's a silly narrative to me. I'm sorry. It's just a silly narrative. But
the notion, and I didn't cover this. Wouldn't you say that, and again, we're coming from a different perspective, so, feel free to hit the cancel button on us. But some of these comments, when you talk about ownership in regards to human beings, that's counterproductive to me. And you got to pay attention to some of the things we're looking at across our society with all the different issues that we're seeing. It's not helpful. I mean, this type of rhetoric only creates more divide. And I'm going to tell you, there's a whole lot of divide I'm seeing. And this is one of those things that's not helpful. And no one's going to be sympathetic to you right now. You're talking about, owners. Well, yeah, of course, yeah, they want some money. It's a business. It's a business for them. What are you doing? I mean, you trying to tell? Do you not want to be paid? And some of these guys, and Odell, like I said, he should be in a good position based off of his contract. There's a bunch of young guys, guys that just getting drafted, other young guys on the come up. They probably don't have the option to sit out. Well, of course, they could, you could sit out, but they're not in a position of luxury to where they've already made millions and millions of dollars. They're not there yet.
Right. If you're a fringe like 7th round pick, if you sit out, there's no guarantee you're making the roster next year. Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
So,
and also this whole thing is about acceptable amounts of risk. A lot of guys came out before the deadline and said, yeah, we're not playing. And a lot of guys, I think, had some really good reasoning behind it. There's a lot of cases where you look at some of the reasoning they say, whether it be underlying conditions, whether it be family type stuff. And there's a lot of stuff you can get behind and say, that's a good reason. Mm-hmm. I can respect that. Odell's got this position, but it's empty because he's not following through with anything. And if he did, again, I think the NFL would be more receptive about what he's saying. They may take a hard look at it, but they have no incentive to right now, as far as I can see.
Right. And the other part of his comments, though, and I'll give him credit for this, is it does appear the NFL, to me at least, is dropping the ball a little bit in terms of preparation, because we don't really have a solid plan from them, right? When the NBA bubble restarted, right, it took a week or two to come out after they approved the plan, but we pretty quickly knew, okay, they're all going to Orlando. We're going to have all this testing, this and that. The players, the coaches, the workers are all coming and going. They're going to be tested. We got the games here. Like, we knew pretty quick exactly what they had in mind. The NFL, we've had snippets here and there. We heard the testing agreements in the preseason when that got canceled. Remember that the testing approvals came out. We have some travel restrictions that came out like a week or two ago about how they're going to have half the bus capacity and they're going to fly with masks. And, I think there's some talk about traveling later before the games. Like maybe you show up on a Saturday for a Sunday game instead of like on a Thursday as they normally do. But are they making efforts to test the staff during the week, during regular routine practices? Are they limiting practices and team activities? Is it just every team for themselves? Is there a standard protocol? Like, I'm scratching the surface of just some random stuff I'm thinking of the top of my head. And we don't have a concrete plan. We know the bubbles work. We have plenty of evidence so far that says the NBA, NHL, and even soccer and WNBA, they've had success with it, right? But those have been solid plans. Baseball has been up and down. You talked about that a lot. The Marlins, we're screwing around and got it messed up. But if you're having protocol violations in the MLB, you're going to have them in the NFL too, right? So is there something the NFL has learned from to say, hey, okay, we're taking it a step further. If you violate protocol, you're getting opted out. We're going to opt you out for you, for the rest of the season. Do we have that in place? Are there further mitigation? Are we going to? So while I think Odell is absolutely right to a degree that the NFL doesn't seem to be as prepared as they could be, or what you would expect for the NFL with all their money and resources. Yeah, the second half of his statement is just getting into clown territory. And like you said, it's hollow words because he did not opt out. He's going to play the season along with anyone else that makes comments about the NFL not being ready. They had more than a week to figure it out and make their decision for their families. And besides the 30, 40 players that opted out, the rest of them are green go. So,
The only and in response to what you're saying as far as the not having a concrete plan, I would have to assume, and I would have to believe right now, that has got to be still in the works and coming together. Because remember, no preseason, so they still got some time. It's not like, oh, tomorrow we need this,
Right. It's September 10th, right? Was the start of the season?
Something like that. So they still got time, even though they may not have it all together. But could it be that they could be still accumulating information. The NFL is about pretty much the last sports league, at least one that we're paying attention to, that is coming back. So if nothing else, they have had the luxury to take their time, look at what bubbles are doing, look at what baseball is doing, learning from those different leagues, and they have no excuse to not have a solid plan. They should be able to have at least as successful as the MLB, because on one hand, they should do a better job, but it's just the volume of players that we could see, but as far as the percentages, their percentage of guys that are, flopping around and not, abiding by the rules or different things, there should be a less percentage. They may have more cases, but they should do a better job because they've had the opportunity to sit back and watch and learn. And if they haven't used that time wisely, then that only strengthens Odell's point. But I gotta believe that we're gonna see something at some point, and they will have it together. That's just what I believe.